Today, I will show how I made a new watch strap from this crocodile leather. This crocodile skin has a semi-glossy finish in an eye-catching metallic blue color. This is the watch I'll be making the watch strap for. It requires an 18mm wide strap at the lugs and will taper down to be 16mm wide at the buckle. I designed this paper pattern to fit this watch, which you can find a link to in the video description. The first step was to roughly cut out all of the pattern pieces. I then selected the best area of the crocodile skin based on the scale pattern and cut out two sections for the long and then for the short strap. This crocodile leather was around 1.6mm thick, so I had to skive down the piece to be able to turn it over edges. Crocodile leather is difficult to skive as there are weak sections between the scale, which will break if you try to skive it too thin. I used a skiving knife to thin the edges down to around 0.7mm thick. This was the Salamander bonded leather I used as the reinforcement layer in between the layers of leather of the watch strap. It was only 0.4mm thick, but it will make sure that the strap will not stretch over time. I cut it according to the pattern, and then skived the reinforcement on the ends, which helps reduce the appearance of bumps after it is folded. For the shaping layer within the watch strap, I use this 2mm thick veg tan leather. This gives the watch strap an interesting contour rather than just being flat, but it does require some skiving and shaping to produce a smooth and round shape. The first step of the construction was to glue and then stick the shaping layer onto the reinforcement layer, using guide marks to keep it centered. I then applied glue to the reinforcement and the crocodile leather, and then stuck them together. I then used a bone folder to help form the crocodile around the contours of the shaping layer. Next was to make small cuts in the crocodile leather, as the top end was going to be folded separately to the body of the strap. I applied contact cement to the edges and then turned over the two edges carefully. I then hammered it down to bond and flatten the turned sections. After applying more contact cement, I then folded the top edge over a 2mm steel rod, which helps leave an opening to install a spring bar later. I could then glue and turn the crocodile leather over the remainder of the exposed edges of the watch strap. The area around the tip was the most important so that the edge will appear smooth and round after turning. Hammering the edges after turning helps it flatten out and even out the thickness of the edge. This was the long strap after completing the edge turning. The short strap follows similar construction steps with the gluing and sticking of the shaping core to the reinforcement layer. Next was to stick these inner layers onto the crocodile leather and form it to the contours of the shaping layer. Again, the short strap requires small cuts, this time on both ends of the crocodile leather, before beginning to turn over the edges on the ends. Next was to apply glue and fold over the ends using the steel rod in place of a spring bar. I then glued and turned the crocodile leather over the remainder of the outside edges of the watch strap and then hammered down on the edges for bonding. This was a short strap after completing the edges. For the inside of the watch strap, I used this Zermatt calfskin made by Haas. This is the go-to leather for lining watch straps because it is waterproof and does not irritate skin. This piece had already been skived down to 0.6mm by the supplier. Using the paper pattern, I cut out the two lining sections for each strap. This lining pattern was designed to be 1mm narrower than the crocodile section. I then applied my maker's stamp using a hot stamp to one of the lining sections. Next, it was time to attach the lining pieces onto the inside of the crocodile straps. After applying glue, I then attached and lined up the lining on the long strap and used a wooden watch strap mold to help round out the shape of the strap. I then marked in the limits of the lining and then trimmed off the excess leather. I used similar steps for the short strap. However, I needed to leave the end at the narrower section unglued, as a keeper would be installed there later. Next, I started working on the keepers to secure the loose end of the strap. I cut out a section of the crocodile skin and then started to skive it to reduce its thickness to be able to turn it later. I managed to get it down to 0.7 mm thick after skiving. I then cut a strip of salamander bonded leather to use as a reinforcing core. I then applied glue and stuck the salpa on the inside of the crocodile. Next was to turn the crocodile edge using the reinforcing layer to control the shape of the keeper. I then wrapped the keeper piece around the two straps to determine the required length of the fixed keeper before trimming it down to length. I then skived the ends to reduce the bulk of the keeper that will appear underneath the lining. Next, I applied glue and stuck in the fixed keeper in position. I could then stick the remaining lining over that area to complete the fixed keeper construction. The movable keeper was constructed in similar steps. However, after measuring the required length to size using the straps, I only skived off one side of each end. These ends could then be stuck together to create a loop. I then used a chisel to punch in a few stitching holes and did a basic stitch that would secure the keeper. This was a completed movable keeper. To mark in a clear stitching line on the crocodile leather, I used this F3 creaser tip attached on a soldering iron. This can mark in a much clearer stitching line than dividers when working with exotic leather. For this project, I used my Kevin Lee Black Diamond Japanese style pricking irons with 2.7 mm spacing, which is a good size for watch straps. Before punching the stitching holes, I carefully planned and marked in all of the hole positions to make sure they were going to be evenly spaced. I could then punch out the holes, careful to keep the irons vertical so no holes would be punched askew. In this project, I use Amy Roke linen thread in 0.55 mm size. Before stitching, I rub the thread with beeswax to help lubricate the linen thread. I then proceeded to stitch down both straps using the saddle stitching method. After stitching, I cut the ends of the threads and then use a bit of white glue on my awl to secure the ends of the linen thread. This is how the stitching on the straps looked after hammering down on the stitches to flatten them. Next was to punch out a hole to install the watch strap buckle. I could then install the buckle in position with a spring bar to complete the short strap. Then on the long strap, I marked in the centers of the buckle holes using dividers, and then proceeded to punch out the holes. The watch strap was finally complete, and I could then install them onto the watch. Then it was time to change into the new watch. I'm really happy with the look of these turn edges on this watch strap. If you enjoyed the video, please like and comment. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.